What if I told you that some of the worst disasters in human history weren't caused by nature, war, or terrorism, but by simple human mistakes? Regular people doing their jobs, making one wrong decision that would turn their world into a literal hellscape. Meet Rajesh. December 2nd, 1984, he's working the night shift, very worried at the Union Carbide pesticide plant in Bhopal, India. His daughter had caught a fever earlier, so his wife told him she'd call the plant if it got worse. But tonight, something else is about to go very wrong. Around midnight, Rajesh notices the pressure gauge climbing, but he thinks it's just broken. Because surely, the safety systems would have triggered by now, right? But they hadn't. Because some maintenance worker had accidentally flushed water into a storage tank containing 40 tons of methyl isocyanate, one of the most toxic chemicals ever manufactured. But why didn't the safeties go off? To save money, the company had disabled them. What happened next took just 2 hours to unfold. The water triggered a runaway chemical reaction. The temperature inside the tank shot up to 200 degrees Celsius. At 12:40 a.m., a safety valve burst, and a massive cloud of toxic gas exploded into the night sky over Bhopal. Rajesh couldn't warn anyone. The plant's siren turned off to avoid disturbing the neighbors. By the time people realized what was happening, it was too late. People woke up choking, their eyes burning, their lungs filling with fluid. They ran into the streets, coughing blood, temporarily blinded. Some died in their sleep. Others made it a few blocks before collapsing. Within hours, 3,800 people were dead. 500,000 people were exposed. To this day, children in Bhopal are still being born with birth defects from the contaminated groundwater. One accidentally opened water valve. That's all it took to create one of history's worst industrial disasters. Picture this. Sarah's rushing through the Boston North End on January 15, 1919. She's late picking up her son from her sister's house, cutting through the industrial district near the harbor. She needs to save 5 minutes, so she takes the shortcut past the massive molasses storage tank. The one that's been making weird groaning sounds lately, but hey, her sister's already annoyed she's late, so... At exactly 12:30 p.m., Sarah hears a sound she'll describe later as like a machine gun. The rivets on the 50-foot-tall molasses storage tank are ripping off, one by one. Pop, 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 pop. Now, you're probably thinking, molasses? How dangerous could that be? Here's what makes this absolutely horrifying. There are 2.3 million gallons of molasses in that tank. And when it ruptures, a 25-foot-high wave of molasses explodes outward at 35 miles per hour, a tsunami of thick, sticky liquid moving faster than most people can run. The wave is so powerful it lifts a firehouse off its foundation and smashes it against the elevated train tracks. So Sarah tries to run, but here's the thing about molasses that makes this a nightmare. You can't swim in it. You can't wade through it. The second it hits you, you're stuck. It's like quicksand, but it's worse because it's also pushing you, crushing you, suffocating you. 21 people died. Some drowned standing up, unable to move as the molasses filled their nose and mouth. Others were crushed against buildings. The molasses was waist deep across 2 city blocks. Horses died, trapped in the sticky mass, their panic screams echoing through the streets. Rescuers worked for days, sometimes accidentally stepping on bodies they couldn't see beneath the dark syrup. The Boston Harbor ran brown for months. And why did it happen? The company built the tank too quickly, never properly tested it, and ignored the warning signs because they wanted to save money on a proper safety inspection. A corporate decision to cut corners. That's the price tag for 21 lives. Marcus pulls into Centralia, Pennsylvania one morning in 1962. He's the new fire chief, just moved his family here for a quieter life. His son's finally settling into his new school, making friends. It's a nice little mining town. Today, he's responding to what should be a routine call about smoke coming from the town dump. Just another day, or so he thinks. The dump sits in an old strip mine pit. And here's where someone made a catastrophic mistake. A few weeks earlier, the town had hired workers to burn trash in the landfill to reduce its size before Memorial Day. Standard procedure. Except nobody checked if the fire was completely out before they left. So one day, Marcus notices smoke coming from the dump site, and he feels his stomach drop. So he went to check, but he noticed that smoke was coming from below the dump site because the fire had found the underground coal seam below the town, the massive coal seam that ran beneath the entire town. They tried everything. Firefighters dug trenches, engineers pumped water, they excavated burning material, but nothing worked, so the fire kept spreading through the abandoned mine tunnels below Centralia, following veins of coal that connected to other veins, other tunnels, other mines. But there's nothing they could do. So by the 1970s, things got weird, then terrifying, because the ground was heating up, too hot to touch in places. Poisonous gases began seeping up up through basements. Trees and vegetation died in perfect circles where carbon monoxide vented from below. The highway developed cracks that spewed steam. In fact, in 1981, a 12-year-old boy nearly died when a sinkhole opened beneath him, dropping him into a 150-degree pit filled with carbon monoxide.
So the government gave up.
In 1992, they told everyone that they had to leave. Today, Centralia is a ghost town with maybe 10 holdouts, but the fire is still burning. Right now, as you watch this video, scientists estimate it has enough coal to continue burning for another 250 years because someone didn't properly extinguish a trash fire 60 years ago. This is Dmitry. It's 1960 and he's celebrating because the Soviet engineers had just finished their massive irrigation project and Dmitry's farm in Uzbekistan was about to receive water from the Aral Sea for the first time. His cotton yields were going to triple his income. His children's children were going to prosper from this. He toasts to Soviet ingenuity, to progress, to the future. But he had no idea. He's celebrating the beginning of one of history's greatest ecological catastrophes. The Soviets had a brilliant idea: divert two massive rivers, the Amu Darya and Sirdarya, away from the Aral Sea to irrigate the desert and grow cotton. On paper, it was a triumph of human engineering, transform wasteland into productive farmland. What could go wrong? Unfortunately, everything. But it happened so slowly that people like Dmitry didn't notice until it was far too late. So year by year, the Aral Sea began to shrink just a little at first. Fishing boats had to go a little farther. The ports needed extensions. No big deal, right? But by 1989, the Aral Sea had split in two. By 2014, the eastern basin was completely gone. What was once the world's fourth largest lake had lost 90% of its volume. So fishing villages that were on the coast were now 100 miles from water. Rusting ships sat in the middle of a toxic desert. But here's where it becomes hell on earth. The exposed seabed wasn't just sand, because for decades, the Soviets had tested biological weapons on an island in the Aral Sea. They dumped pesticides, fertilizers, and industrial waste into the water. So now salt storms sweep up 100 million tons of toxic, poisonous dust every year, carrying it across Central Asia. The region now has the highest rates of throat cancer in the world. Infant mortality skyrocketed. Birth defects became common. Kidney disease, respiratory illness, anemia, all endemic. The climate changed. Summers got hotter, winters got colder, and the growing season shortened, destroying the very farms the project was meant to help. Dmitry lived to see his grandchildren born with severe health problems, to see the fishing industry die, to see his community poisoned by dust storms carrying decades of Soviet chemical weapons residue. He lived to see paradise turn to hell, all because planners never asked, what happens if we drain a sea? Yuki's sitting at her desk at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant on March 11th, 2011. She's an administrative worker, and honestly, it's a boring Friday afternoon. Her ex-husband is supposed to drop her daughter off at 6 p.m., and she's already planning what to make for dinner. The plant has been running safely for 40 years. It's one of the most sophisticated facilities in the world with backup systems for the backup systems. But at 2:46 p.m., the building starts to shake. The Tohoku earthquake hits, magnitude 9.0, one of the most powerful earthquakes ever recorded. But here's the thing, the plant handles it perfectly. So the reactors automatically shut down, the emergency systems engage. Everything is working exactly as designed. Yuki and everyone else evacuate to the safe zones. For 41 minutes, everything seems okay. They survived. They're safe. But then someone spots it on the horizon, a wall of water. The tsunami is 46 feet tall. And here's the fatal mistake. When they built Fukushima Daiichi in the 1960s, engineers calculated the maximum possible tsunami height at 38 feet. They built the seawall to 33 feet to save money, but they were wrong by 13 feet. That's all, 13 feet. The tsunami washes over the seawall like it's not even there. It floods the basement where, and this is the critical failure, the emergency diesel generators are located. The same generators that cool the reactor cores, the same generators that prevent meltdown. Every single one fails. All of them at the same time. Now the plant is running on batteries, just batteries. And those batteries have about 8 hours of life. Yuki and everyone else have already been evacuated, but the skeleton crew knows what's coming. They have 8 hours to restore power to the cooling systems, or 3 reactors will melt down. And unfortunately, they don't make it. So over the next 4 days, Japan watches in horror as 3 reactors experience full meltdown. Hydrogen builds up in the containment buildings. Then the explosions start. 1, 2, 3. Massive blasts that blow the roofs off the reactor buildings, sending radioactive material into the atmosphere. The radiation readings are so high that workers can only stay on site for minutes at a time. A 12-mile exclusion zone is established, then expanded to 20 miles. 154,000 people evacuate their homes. Some will never return. The government later admits the evacuation should have been wider, but they didn't want to cause panic. Radioactive water is still leaking into the Pacific Ocean today. The cleanup will take 40 years and cost over $200 billion. Towns inside the exclusion zone look like the apocalypse. Abandoned cars, empty homes, personal belongings left behind in a panic. Wild animals now roam the streets.